what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're validating their feelings.
Yeah.
That they actually have a voice in
Yeah.
the matter. Because that's important. Most children do not feel like they have a voice.
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Family Care Learning Podcast. My name is Brandon Jones. I'm the Director of Arizona Family Counseling and Christian Family Care. With me today I have Steve and his wife Deanna, and they have been sharing with us a step family, merged family curriculum that has just been created or born out of just a ton of work with some pastors and then drawing on your own experience. And so if you haven't checked out the previous podcasts, check them out below, where we're working through this curriculum and just kind of giving a brief intro to that. And so the curriculum that we're working on today is the R in the merge, so MER, and the R stands for recognize, right? And so what's this R recognize about?
So in recognizing, what we've done is we've kind of taken a look at three general phases that a step family can go through.
Yeah.
And I want to say can go through because, again, every step family is different. So the dynamics can be different.
Yeah.
But so we look at the crisis phase, the healthy or the stable phase, and then the healthy phase.
Okay.
And what we do is we talk about tools that are what does each phase look like?
Yeah.
So so you can identify it. Tools that can help you get from one phase to the next phase. And the idea here is just to be able to embrace where you're at within your family.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's not we have to get to the next phase. It's let's embrace where we are. And there are things that we can. Even in a crisis phase, there's things that we can embrace.
Okay. So can we take the crisis phase and just kind of, what does that look like a little bit? And yeah.
Sure. Well, I think, one of the first things to understand here, though, is that we say phase. It's not that you move from one phase to the next phase to the next phase in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
You may enter your step family at a completely different phase. Think about it as it's, therapeutically, we talk about, the stages of grief.
Oh, great point.
5 stages of grief, right? And with grief, the person who's going through grief, who's experienced loss, may enter the grieving process at any one of those 5 stages, right?
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily move through them in a linear fashion. And once you've gone through a phase, that doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to that particular phase, right? Or stage, I should say.
Yeah.
So we kind of think of the same thing when we talk about these phases within a step family, that we're looking to embrace. So please don't think of them in linear, and don't think that, once you've checked one box, that you're never going to come back to it. You'll never have crises again, because you are going to.
That's such a good point. And so, as you mentioned, the stages of grief, like the Kubler-Ross stages. Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, we're in stable now. How do we, as you mentioned, the second one, right? Stable.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, there must be something wrong if we go back to crisis phase. It's like, no, this is just where we're at with kind of this season of our step family or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is crisis phase? What kind of things do you kind of briefly touch on with crisis phase?
So crisis phase, I mean, really, it's just in the name of itself. We're experiencing a lot of crisis. Crisis is kind of like the overwhelming theme of our step family.
Yeah.
We're always in crisis.
Yeah.
Miscommunication.
Right.
Yeah.
Behavior coming out of kids and or adults in the family, right?
I was going to say, that's not just limited to kids sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So identifying what that looks like, that's important.
Yeah.
And that one's obviously a very easy one. But we also want to give tools on how do you not only survive during that phase, but also be able to move on. And there are things that you can do to work yourself towards a more stable phase.
Yeah.
One of the things, we're not going to go into it today, but one of the things is developing a parenting plan. And I think that is one of the most crucial things.
Yeah.
Because we already talked about in one of the previous sessions that parenting is one of the biggest issues that merged families deal with.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So developing a parenting plan, I think, is key. But there's also another tool that we offer, and we don't have some fancy name for it or anything like that, but we just call it the triangle method. And oddly enough, I've even used this in therapy sessions that have nothing to do with step families, because I think it's a wonderful kind of a tool. So what we're doing is we're looking at discipline with kids. We're looking at in a sense of what we want to do is that with the triangle, we have 3 points that we want to make sure that we hit, and we can move around that, and we can go in between. We can. There's not a specific order with this either, just like there isn't with the phases.
Yeah.
But what we do is we look at discipline from the standpoint of validation, validating our child and how they feel, about whatever it is that is involving the discipline.
Yeah.
And then the discipline itself, or the boundaries, or whatever that looks like, but the discipline, the negative aspect of it. And then also adding in love and grace. And I think that's very important. So you're kind of, you think of a sandwich. A lot of people talk about that, and you want to sandwich bad news, right? Good news, bad news, good news, right? So it's kind of along that same concept, but it takes it a little bit deeper. And I don't want to go into all of it, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're validating their feelings, that they actually have a voice in the matter, because that's important. Most children do not feel like they have a voice.
Thinking about, for those of you that are just joining us, if you haven't checked out the other podcasts, check them out below. But one of the things that we had discussed before is that this idea of the children didn't have a choice in this, right? And so it's like, as they're going through all this grief and loss, right? Like they're going to need this validation, or it's like, hey, if you don't hear me, I'm just going to shut down, right? Like, and so I can see how this triangle approach is like, let me be intentional, knowing one of your needs is to be validated, because you're going through grief and loss, especially early on with that. And so, wow, like and so this is one tool that I would imagine. So going from crisis, blow-ups, or arguments and all this tension, grieving and loss, and it's going, here's one way to parent with this triangle that can really help your child even kind of move through this.
Well, and also with the crisis phase, I kind of skipped over this, and I just realized that, and that is, we didn't talk about that there are things that you can embrace. Which is really difficult for us to even conceive. That why would you want to embrace anything about crises?
Crisis equals negativity.
This is bad.
Nobody wants to be there.
Usually
one of the key points that we want to bring up is that this is only for a season. That gives us the freedom and the opportunity to be able to embrace the fact that we are going through this, but it's only for a season. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. We may not see it right yet. Hopefully it's not a freight train coming our way. Metallica reference for the day. We want to be able to embrace something within that phase, and that's important to know, that this is only for a season. You're not going to remain in crisis forever.
It's interesting how many people that I think I've worked with in the counseling department, where part of the ickiest part of the crisis is they don't have that belief that it's a season, it's going to end. And so they're like, this is going to be my lot in life forever. And it's so dysregulating to the people that are going through it. And so it's like, that alone, of just being able to kind of have that nugget and hold on to that truth. Thank you for that.
We tend to only see the here and now.
And so it's just a season. So then the next season after crisis is stable. And so what's that look like?
The stable phase is kind of like, arguments are at a minimum. There's not much talking back from the teenagers. Parents are getting along, all of that good stuff. But you don't just want to coast along, right? You want to take it to the next level. So there's positives and there's negatives to coasting along, because you're never going to get growth if you're just coasting along, right? And then... And one of the really good things that can be positive in the coasting phase is being able to look back over the last 6 months or 12 months. Where were you? Where was your family? Where was your marriage?
Yeah.
Where was your relationship with that stepchild? Where were you then? Where are you now? What has changed? How far have you come? And so it's not like it's a one and done if something pops up in your family. That's why we go back and forth to the different phases. But as you see God bringing you through all of the crises and get you to a point of being able to just go, okay, I'm coasting for just a minute. But remembering that he always wants to take you to the next level. It can always be better.
Yeah.
Sure.
I love that, right? Like, even as you were talking about that, I just noticed, I was like I sighed, right? Because there's almost this breath of relief. And in that phase, I think so many times people can almost be stuck in expecting the crisis instead of going, hey, it hasn't been that horrible the last weeks or months or whatever, right? Like, by looking back and kind of really comparing that. And I think even thinking about my own experience of, there was a lot of expectation because of all the crises that had happened early on, that it was just like a kind of, for probably much longer than I needed to, expected that as a child in a blended family. That was just like, and so I was like, man, I wonder how much stress that we all would have been able to let go of if just by going, hey, do you see, like, we're not fighting as much as we used to, or not as many problems? Like, I imagine that would create a great deal of peace, or kind of like, hey, this is not
we're not so bad.
We're not so evil right now.
We're doing okay.
Yeah, and I think in life in general, always being retrospective, looking back and seeing the growth and the progress that we've made is important in all aspects of life, but it's really critical within a step family, I think.
Yeah.
So, and we, as leaders and as, counseling couples together the way we have, we've gotten to see that, where it's like, couples, they don't see it themselves, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
All they see is the crisis, even though the crises may be few and far between now in the stable phase, all they see are the crises. Yeah. And we've been able to point out, hey, let's look back 6 months ago. Where were you at? Yeah. And then they describe where they were 6 months ago. And then it's like, describe where you are today. Yeah. And all of a sudden you literally see the light bulbs go off. And they're like, wow. Yeah. We have come a long way.
Yeah. And it can change your perspective. I'm thinking about, like Paul talks about that in Ephesians, where it's like, hey, remember where you were when you were dead in your sins, and now where you're at, right? And you're just like, what a difference that makes. And so, I'm going, that totally makes sense biblically, and how we kind of look back, and just from like an emotional kind of perspective.
It instills hope.
Yeah. Of like, hey, we got this far, like, okay, we are making progress. Yeah. I love that. And so you mentioned like this triangle tool. Are there any tools that kind of help you move from the stable phase to, was it the healthy phase that's next?
Yeah, we want to move towards the healthy phase. And there's a few different things that we talk about. We offer a tool that is for the couples themselves with their communication. Dr. Gary Chapman, he is famous for his 5 love languages, right? Yeah. Well, he also wrote another book, and out of that book, we pull out some things. There's the 5 types of intimacy. Okay. And we talk about those, but we're really what to hone in on here today in this podcast is really the 5 love languages, and understanding the love languages of not only your spouse, but of your children, your stepchildren. In fact, Deanna was really the one that this was really impactful for her.
Somebody mentioned the 5 love languages to me. I'd never heard of it before, and they had the kid copy, understanding your children's love language. They let me borrow it. I read it. I'm like, this is an amazing tool. How have I never heard of this before? Yeah. Now, granted, it was 20 years ago. I don't know when it originally came out, but I hadn't heard of it. Yeah. And so I needed to become a PhD, not only in Steve, but also in all of the girls, all 4 of them, right? So I would start asking questions, kind of like, would you rather, right? Yeah. So would you rather go to the mall and have me buy you something that is really meaningful to you, like what are those stuffed bear things?
Oh, the Build-A-Bear.
The Build-A-Bears, yeah. Like, because I know that that's a gift thing that has a memory attached to it. And okay. Or, would you rather go to the beach and just spend the day together? Yeah. And then as they would answer, I would kind of keep mental track in my mind and then speak as loudly as I could in their love language. Now, there were 6 of us in our family. There are 5 love languages. So there were 2 people. There were only 2 people that had the same primary love language. And it was Steve, and it was the stepdaughter that I had the hardest time with. Part of the reason it was because it was quality time.
Oh, okay.
Dad wanted my quality time. Yeah. She wanted Dad's quality time. And I'm like, and I'm acts of service. I'm like, everybody just needs to clean the house.
Yeah. Right? I can't spend quality time.
And pick up those towels, that green towel.
Green towels on the floor.
Yeah. It's so interesting just saying that, right? Like, as it's kind of popping up personal experience. I remember my stepdad, who was trying to be very generous, and he was a gift, right? And gifts is one of the lowest on my radar, right? But it was like this kind of like, why are you not more grateful for all these gifts I'm giving you? When that just he wasn't speaking my language. And it wasn't that I didn't appreciate it, but it didn't move me the same way, because it was like he was speaking a foreign language to me, right? Sure. And it's just like I wasn't receiving what he was sending. And how important would it be, right, for this merging of families, and you're trying to build attachment as quickly as possible and connections, and it's like, how more important would it be to go, I need to speak your language so you receive it. It's like, wow.
Well, and that's a great example of how we tend to speak the loudest, the language that we love the most.
Yes, yeah.
And you're right. And it takes training.
Yeah.
We have to train ourselves how to speak somebody else's love language.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, and like you were talking about, that's lowest on your list, right? Like probably coming in at 5 of 5.
Right. Yeah.
So my 5 of 5 is words of affirmation. So he can tell me this stuff all the time. I'm like, I know I'm great. Not really.
Yeah. Yes.
And not in a condescending way, or, that I do appreciate the words.
Right.
But it's like, really, acts are the things that get me.
Yes.
And I remember walking into my bedroom after work one day. All the laundry was done. It was all folded. It was on the bed.
Yeah.
And I walked out, and I'm like, who did this? And my stepdaughter that was living with us at the time, she goes, it must have been the laundry fairy, and walked off. That was the first time that she spoke my love language.
Oh, wow.
And she saw the reaction that I had.
Yeah.
And so that is going back to, training our kids first, right?
Yeah.
She saw it in me.
Yeah.
She saw me doing it, and then she followed suit.
She picked up on it. Oh, right.
And I got to benefit.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes with good intentions, if you're not speaking the right language, it can almost be offensive when it's like I said with my stepdad, he's like, hey, you didn't like what I got you. It's like, no, that's not it. It just doesn't mean that much to me. And so, I think, wow, and I imagine, like to your point, right? Like, we kind of have to be the interpreters for our kids as the bigger, stronger, kinder, more regulated individuals, right? Leading the family. It's like we have to lead by it for them to even pick up on speaking the different languages like that. And
that's not saying that as adults we don't have feelings and that we don't get hurt or anything like that. But sometimes you have to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to be the hero for your kids, whether they're your bio kids or your step kids, then be the hero. Make that decision.
Yeah. I could see how spending intentional time and energy, if you're at a stable family phase, could really kind of grow this into a healthy, thriving family. Right?
Yes, exactly. Well, and you think about it in the terms of, remember the foundation that we talked about a few podcasts ago? And right here is where you really see the foundations and where you're at with them. Like crisis phase, that foundation is still a little shaky.
Right.
Yeah. But you get to this phase. Yeah. You get to this phase, the stable phase, and all of a sudden you're realizing that foundation is really starting to solidify.
Yeah.
It's starting to harden.
Yeah.
And become stronger.
And we can build on it.
Yes.
Right? Like we can build these relationships on this foundation.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I love that. And so then the final phase is this healthy phase.
Yeah.
And so,
which kind of like the crisis phase, the healthy phase kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? But really what you want to identify here, what you see here is that communication is probably at its all-time best.
Yeah.
Everybody is learning how to communicate. Love languages are being spoken to one another on a regular basis. That foundation that we just spoke about is really becoming stronger now. And so
not perfect.
No, not perfect.
Yes.
Not perfect.
Good point.
But here's a key, though, is that when crises do come up, like when we kind of slide back to that crisis phase, here's how you slide back into that phase, by the way, is that when the crisis comes up, that's all you see is the crisis.
Yeah.
Now you've slipped back into the crisis phase.
Yeah.
But staying in this healthy phase, when a crisis comes up, it's like you almost see it as an opportunity to grow.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we've been through crises before. We know how to manage this. We know how to deal with it. We got this.
What are we supposed to learn from this?
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. What are we supposed to learn from it?
Yeah, which I love. I'm so excited about our next podcast, right? Because it's kind of the get ready, right? Of like, let's get ready for some of these things that are going to maybe cause crises in our lives in this. And so, Steve and Deanna, thank you so much for sharing this, just a little bit more about this curriculum. And again, for those of you that are out there that are going, we are definitely in the crisis phase and we need some help. Arizona Family Counseling, Christian Family Care, like we want to be there for you. We want to support your family and strengthen your family. Would you check out the link below at ArizonaFamilyCounseling.com, where we have therapists that would be thrilled to meet with you and support you in whatever phase that you're in. Thanks for joining us.